Hi, this is June Stanley. This is my EDL 851, Module 13. This is a case study about a teacher who's an excellent teacher. She's having troubles at home and it's affecting her behavior at school enough so that the principal now has to take some action. This is a small rural school, elementary school. It has a small staff who've worked together well for 8 years or so. And Jean Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, is a new principal. She's been at this particular school for 3 years. Mrs. Horton is a first grade teacher. She's having a hard time at home. Her behavior is changing at school. And now Mrs. Wilson is having to do something about her behavior. So everything's gone fine at Crestview Elementary. Mrs. Wilson's been there for 3 years. They're piloting a new reading program. All the teachers are on board except Mrs. Horton. Mrs. Horton has been very stressed lately. She's arguing with the other teachers about the reading program. She's arguing with anyone that doesn't agree with her. And it's very unlike her. She's been teacher of the year before. She's always been an excellent veteran teacher. And so the problems really began with Mrs. Horton in Mrs. Wilson's 4th year of school. Mrs. Wilson starts receiving complaints about her, and she finds out that Mrs. Horton's husband has left and left her with 2 teenage children to raise. And so Mrs. Horton's obviously under a lot of stress. The children seem to be very unhappy. The parents are calling the superintendent and the school board, and so Mrs. Wilson is now being forced to investigate. So Mrs. Wilson spoke to Mrs. Horton, and then before she had time to really do much else, a parent came in and absolutely insisted on a meeting immediately. So they set up a meeting for the next morning. The meeting did not go well. Mrs. Horton was highly confrontational, very defensive, and so Mrs. Wilson cut the meeting off. And she had to promise the parent something would be done immediately for his child. And so if I were a principal, what do I need to know? I need to know exactly what the complaints are from the parents. I really need to know what's going on in Mrs. Horton's classroom because maybe I haven't been in there as much as I should. I should find out any potential legal issues that I might need to avoid, and I should know about them ahead of time. And I need to know what kind of union issues might be applicable here. And so also, are there procedures in place to deal with things like this? I also need to know how I can support Mrs. Horton because she's obviously an excellent teacher and I don't want to lose her. So she must be very stressed out for things to have disintegrated this far. And so I need to know how I can support her, but I also need to know what my options are if we can't resolve the problem. And I also need to know what can I do to repair the damage that's already been done. That we're 6 years into the school year, 6 weeks into the school year, and so the students have been impacted. The parents' trust has been we've lost a lot of the parents' trust. And also, how can I avoid this kind of issue in the future? How can I catch it before I'm in this kind of a position? So the problem is really twofold. Mrs. Horton's behavior is unacceptable. Her students are very upset, and therefore parents are, rightly so. My bosses, the superintendent, the school board are understandably unhappy. On the other hand, Mrs. Horton's a valuable teacher, then I don't want to lose her. And once again, she must be extremely stressed out for her behavior to be this bad. So my plan of action, I need to gather information from all the sources I can, mentors, other principals, the parents, other teachers and staff, perhaps some legal counsel, and Mrs. Horton, anyone I can talk to get all the information that I need. Once I have that information and I've begun to develop a plan, I need to present that to my superintendent and get his or her support and guidance. And then next I would meet with Mrs. Horton. She must be at her wit's end because, as I said, the case study shows that she really is an excellent teacher. And so I need to do 2 things. I need to tell her that I'm very concerned about her as well as the problem that she's presenting. And I want to assure her that she'll have all the support she needs. And on the other hand, the other side of that is that her behavior cannot go on. And she needs to understand that very, very clearly. And I think that would help her to know that it has to change. She has to deal with things in her life. She has no choice. And then offer her alternatives. This is what we can do. It's not unsolvable. We can deal with this. We can fix it. And so the whole process, I would hope, would really be collaborative. And so my next step would be to work with Mrs. Horton to develop a plan to resolve the problem. And I would hope that I could utilize other members of the staff and teachers or anyone else that Mrs. Horton might be interested in having come in to help us with the problem. It might be helpful to her to have that kind of support as well. And so our plan has to have several parts of support for her. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can have another teacher in the classroom with her. I can be in the classroom more. We can get her an aide. We can have someone help her with her extra classwork. Teachers work long hours. We can give her some time off, maybe one day a week, maybe a couple weeks off, maybe a month off. Whatever she needs, I want her to feel like she's going to get the kind of support she needs and therefore feel that she'll be able to actually do what we're asking her to do. And although she already knows how to behave, the study shows she's a good teacher, excellent teacher, there has to be some way of verifying that she is, that her behavior has changed. And then there has to be some kind of consequences if it doesn't. She has to know that there is no alternative. Her behavior has to change. So my next step, meet with the parents alone without Mrs. Horton, outline the plan, make sure they know Mrs. Horton will be monitored and supported, and make sure they know that they can always talk to me. They need to just pick that phone up at any time that they feel like they need to communicate with me. And so then I would like Mrs. Horton to meet with the parents along with myself, perhaps one couple at a time. I'll talk to Mrs. Horton about that and see how she feels. But I want them to meet face to face so the parents can really see that Mrs. Horton's on board, that she really, really is dedicated to her students, and she really wants this plan to work. Finally, the plan will go into action. Mrs. Horton will be monitored and supported. Those are really two key parts of the plan. Lots of meetings with her to see how it's going, tweaking the plan as we go along if we need to. And then in the end, develop a protocol for problems in the future that would be similar to this. So does my resolution of the problem promote the success of all students? I think it does. I think the success of students depends so heavily on how good their teacher is. And Mrs. Horton is an excellent teacher. And yet the students need to know that they're safe and that their teachers are also accountable. And so what my plan does is serves as a model for them in how to handle problems like this with compassion and communication, accountability, trust, and treating everyone like the school is truly a community and that it's part of the larger community. So my feelings in facing this problem, worry that I couldn't solve it, angry because I'm having to deal with someone else's problems, frustrated, and yet the other side of that is that I'm grateful as you work with people. You're really grateful to how well people can work together, hopeful that the problem can be resolved, and then of course it's very gratifying to be able to resolve a problem like this. And my thoughts were, wow, how can I stop what's going on? And how can I repair the damage that's already been done? And then how can I use this to strengthen the school and the community and ensure that my students are even more successful? So my values, students come first, of course. And what follows from that is a good teacher is invaluable because they're so key. Also in ensuring that this problem enables me to be a good role model and also shows the school as a model for how the school This culture can be compassionate and yet still have structure and protocol, and the students come first. It's all for them. So a few of the questions I still have, it doesn't seem to me like the communication was very good in this school. The teachers called someone other than the principal. Mrs. Horton never came to the principal to say, hey, I'm really, really struggling. Other teachers didn't come to the principal to say, what's going on? She really needs help. And perhaps it's because the school was quite successful, and it's only this problem that brought out the fact that there needs to be better communication and collaboration. And I would think also more awareness of what's going on in those classrooms. 6 weeks is a long time to have some seriously unhappy students. And also, I think I'd want to know how to really build a culture of trust and respect so that people, all stakeholders, really felt like they were free to communicate with me and with each other. So, enhancing instructional capacity, and how does that promote the academic success and the personal well-being of every student? I think my plan enhances the instructional capacity because mainly for two things. It improves communication among all the stakeholders, and it really encourages collaboration. And studies have shown that those are some of the key things to increasing instructional capacity. Another thing is ensuring high-quality teachers, and being able to retain an excellent teacher is very important. And so having improved instructional capacity, what about the academic success of each student? There's some very key practices studies shown, and some of those are a culture of trust, compassion, responsibility, and accountability. And I think my plan hits on all of those. They all work together, and I don't know how you could have a successful school without them. And as far as the personal well-being of every student, what could be more important, particularly in an elementary school, and most especially in a first grade classroom, than the student's relationship with their teacher? They should really feel like the teacher is a friend and is highly approachable. And that goes not only for the teacher, but me as a principal as well. There really has to be trust and respect and communication. These are my references. Thank you for listening.